Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, genius economist, venture capitalist, and political analyst and strategist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical, political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on weaponizing the federal purse strings is Len Carter. Len is an investment banker, business consultant, and private investor. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Carter.
Welcome back. It's terrific to join you, my cohorts, my fellow travelers, or whatever, on my weekly Wednesday 6:30 podcast, on our podcast, because you play a major role in whatever is worthwhile about this podcast. Your input is priceless. I couldn't pay a consultant or a consulting firm to give me the wisdom and the feedback that you all give me without any cost. So thank you. I love you all. And I'm sorry that each week we come to you with this program that inevitably, this podcast that inevitably tends to depress most of us, or should depress most of us, because it deals with the current events that are newsworthy. And the only thing that's newsworthy is bad news. I think I mentioned in the past that I had some group came to me with an excellent business plan, well written, that they probably paid $50,000 or more for consultants to help them write this great deck, this great presentation, this executive summary and conclusion of what a great business it's going to be. And when I read it, it was going to be a destination to compete with the other social networks, but dealing with good news, only good news. And it was beautiful, I wish that it could catch on, but nobody cares about, if you look at the headlines of any major newspaper or any successful media outlet, magazines, social network, anything, it's based on scandal and wrongdoing and even criminal activity and murder and mass killings, because all of those are of interest. If somebody gives a big donation to help feed children, I've never seen it make the front page. It might if they have no other news, or it might make it even if they have other news, somewhere in the middle of the paper or at the end of the paper or at the end of the discussion on the podcast or whatever. So I have to apologize for being the vehicle, this podcast, in reviewing the week's current events of how depressing it is. The war in Ukraine and Russia, the trade war with China and other countries, tariffs, the decimation of the economy because of the tariffs, in our country, sadly, the number of killings by people who have guns and are doing it without any real worthy motives. In most cases, it's hate. It's just such a terrible thing. The news is all bad, all depressing. That nice young men, you think they're wonderful, they're doing well in school, and all of a sudden they come to the school and kill 5 or 6 or even more, and wound even more. So, in a way, we shouldn't have this kind of program, because all I'm doing is rubbing it into your wounds, because it's got to be depressing. But that's what people that I wouldn't buy a newspaper that didn't have scandal and things that were striking, or didn't have Trump coming on and being abusive, because even if you disagree with him, it's always interesting what he's proposing, what he's doing. Hillary should be in jail, or so. It's rambunctious and it's gutsy, and it's really entertaining if it wasn't so tragic that we're so mean to each other. So, in response to that, because I know you're going to hear things that, if you're not aware of them yourself at this juncture, which is unlikely, but even so, repeating some of the facts during the week or the occurrences during the month or the day is likely to be depressing. And it should be, that we don't have some kind of reasonable gun control that doesn't let everybody or anybody that might be mentally disturbed or in other ways hate-driven acquire these weapons of mass. I don't know if it's mass destruction, because it's not so much that they destroy buildings. Although this week was the anniversary of the Oklahoma bombing by an American of 12 buildings in Oklahoma, killed 160 people, including many children, many government dedicated employees that serve their communities, wiped out a hotel. It was totally devastating. They caught the perpetrator, and he was given a death sentence, thankfully, but that doesn't help all the families and all the orphans and widows and family members and friends that till this day are still devastated. So that's part of our history in this country. Of all the countries in the world, there's no other country as likely to be killing its own people. Maybe some of the backward countries in Africa, I don't even know if they're because they probably don't have the weapons, they can't afford them. So to contend or to insulate you from the depression that's likely to come, I like to give you a lift in your life and add to your ability to be happy by telling you about my book, Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. And especially at least give you 1 or 2 ideas that's quick and doesn't take too much of the valuable time we have. So I try to come up with something, some idea, but my book, Happiness Guaranteed, is full of ideas, full of humor, full of jokes, full of philosophy and guidance from the most brilliant people over the centuries, by philosophers, by psychologists, by rabbis, priests, uh, the wisest people, by Plato and Socrates, and it's all in this book. All the things that helped me overcome the worst times and always be happy no matter what. And that's the bottom of the book says, if you see it, you might see it. It shows up on the bottom of the cover, how to be happy no matter what. So I preach to you, please, please, I beg you. I not only beg you, I insist that you smile, that you do everything in your life with joy, that you do things to help others that will give you real gratification. I've found out over the years that gives me more gratification helping others than any material things, a yacht or private plane, or like many of my classmates from Harvard that were very successful, or my Wall Street contemporaries that made it big, as I did. By the time we were 40, we were multimillionaires, even though I started out with going to Harvard Business School completely broke. If Harvard didn't pay my tuition and my rent at off premises, in those days I didn't have. I went back to with 3 kids, 3 young. The oldest was 4 or 5, not even 5, and they paid for everything. And by the time I was 40, I got out when I was 30, and my good fortune and my dedicated hard work helped me to reach the top of Wall Street successes. I was written up in Fortune magazine and Forbes and so forth. So, but every one of those people that I just described that did as well as I did, or not even nearly as well, but very well. The first thing I found out, they got their own private jet, they got their own yacht that slept 12 people or something and could take them throughout the world. And their guests, the 2 of them even, of this group, even bought their own island. And overwhelmingly, practically every one of them bought a mansion in the Hamptons or some other lucrative area, either Paris or the Caribbean. And it's very exciting, and I'm sure they got a lot of joy out of those possessions, but not nearly as much as I keep getting throughout my life from the charity that I gave, from the help I gave others. I found that people I funded with scholarships to get medical degrees that write to me even to this day, that have great medical practices or doing voluntary work throughout the world in helping others in their diseases and their tragedies, write to me and thank me. They say, Mr. Davis, without your help, I could never be doing the work that I'm doing. And you made a big difference in my life. And it gives me more joy that some of my friends had that lost their material possessions, because nothing is permanent. But what's permanent is the good deeds you do, the mitzvahs that you do. Because to get a letter like that years later for something that I gave to help children that have cancer or heart disease, infants, that's heartbreaking. So there's nothing more thrilling to me, more exciting, more rewarding than to get a letter from a mother that says, Mr. Davis, thank you. My child survived cancer, advanced cancer, and I learned that you were the major contributor to her medications and her treatments by major doctors. So do good things. The payback is priceless. So, and do everything with joy. Smile. Be happy. Always have a happy face, even in the face of the worst incidents in your life. If you do it, handle it with optimism and hope, and realize that you can make a difference still, and you can have great days beyond the current seemingly endless days that could never, if you lose somebody you love, you can't replace that. But with time and with proper behavior, and even memorialize them with great deeds like starting foundations that cures what that loved one died from, and have dinners and events that have others share in and memorialize them, paying tribute to them. Out of adversity, you can make wonderful things happen. So without further ado, I insist that you smile, that you laugh, that you be happy, even in the face of hardship. And make sure you, if you can, get one good friend, one great friend that's there for you no matter what. There's nothing more valuable than that. Somebody you can turn to, say anything, will never judge you, and will be constructive in having you think about the future, remind you that, last year or 2 years ago, remember that trip we took, but we have the same ski date in Montana coming up in December, even though it's only April, and you can get a smile on their face and have them think beyond the mood, the focus they're on now. So be happy. And if you're not going to be happy, I'm going to come in around and add to your misery. It's up to you. You're in charge. Life happens, but you make life happen. You're in control. Don't let life happen to you. It happens to you whether you like it or not. But make sure that you control the elements that you can. You can't avoid tragedies, because every human being that lives long enough is likely to have adversity, major difficulties, disappointments, and incredible, almost insurmountable tragedies. So God bless you all. And if I find out you're not smiling and looking forward to the future with optimism and hope and believing that things are going to be good again, I'm going to come around personally and make sure, grab you by the collar and make you smile, or make you cry, one or the other. Or have you beat me up so you'll feel better. Okay, so without further ado, I wanted to tell you the fastest way to get happy, I found, is to get this book, acquire it, have somebody gift it to you, tell them you love it, that would be your favorite gift, whatever. And I'm so sure you'll benefit from it and you'll enjoy it as well, because it's not a homework assignment. It's 365 pages, one page for every day of the year, of humor, of jokes, of ideas by the greatest individuals in the history of the human race, of civilization. So I'm so sure you're going to enjoy it because I get so much joy of hearing from all the people that purchased it. Not all, but those that are nice enough to call me, and those who got it as a gift even months later, when most people forget who gave them the gift even, or don't even use the gift beyond the immediate period within the weeks or months that they got it. So I know if you acquire this book and start on whatever page, even though it's 365 pages, you could start in the middle of the book because every page has wisdom and helpful ideas and hints and directives on how to be happier. So I'm so sure you'll like it and you'll enjoy it. But in the event that you're the one that finds it was not a good investment, it didn't pay off, it's not bringing you any dividends, I think it'll bring you major dividends in terms of happiness, improving the quality of your life, I will give you the best deal that you ever had. You send me your purchase slip, or if you got it as a gift, ask the person that gifted it to you for the purchase slip. And whatever that he paid or you paid, I will return your purchase price, and not only return the purchase price, let you keep the book, so you got nothing to lose, and I will give you double the purchase price. So I'm betting that you're going to love it. You're going to appreciate it. So that's the fastest way I know. I wish it was available when I was young to access all the wisdom and all the great ideas. Not my ideas, ideas that I gathered from hundreds and thousands of years of human existence on Earth, from Plato and Socrates to the religious leaders, the saints, and the Nobel Prize winners, and the greatest psychologists, and Freud. I mean, it's got everybody. Well, what's his name? Who wrote "Stop Worrying and Start Living"? Uh, he wrote "How to Win Friends and Influence People."
Power of Positive Thinking.
No,
Dale, not Dale Carnegie.
no, he's an author. The one who wrote Power of Positive Thinking. I definitely quote him because he's brilliant. He's a priest that ran one of the top churches in New York and mid-Manhattan. And he wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. His name was Stein. And no, I was thinking of who wrote... at my stage of life, I'm not too great on remembering names. I know his name as well as I know my own. What the hell's my own name? Do you know who I'm talking about? It'll come to me. Anyway, all the greatest thinkers on this subject. So get the book, get double your money back, and keep the book if you're not elated with it. I get good feedback all the time, and I'm so pleased that I could deliver goodwill and happiness. I wish I could do it to every member. I try to do it. Every member of my family, every member of my community, every member of my country, all of mankind, if I could. That's my goal. Instead of fighting in wars and killing each other and sending young people that we love on both sides, good people that would be best friends, and not for the government sending them with armaments that kill quickly and multiple killings as fast as they can. Absent the government's pushing them to do this, these young men and women might very well be best friends and be developing the greatest new technologies and cures for diseases. And so that's my goal, not to make one or two people happy, as many as people as I like, especially my valued audience and cohorts, participants in this podcast. So without further ado, get the book. If you're not happy with it, you'll be happy to get double your money back and keep the book. And now I'm delighted to have back one of my favorite people in the whole world, Len Carter. He's a genius. Every school he went to, he graduated top of his class. He went to the same Harvard class, Harvard Business School class I did. It's considered the top, even though Harvard's in big trouble, and a lot of people have a right to take issue with some of their behavior and not acting against people that acted really mean and hateful and didn't respond appropriately. Still, Harvard Business School, along with Stanford, another school that Len Carter graduated from at the top of his class, also one of the best business schools and schools of creating entrepreneurs, more billionaires probably than any other school, in high tech. And he's a graduate electrical engineer from Cornell, undergraduate, afterwards Harvard Business School and Stanford. So we're lucky to have him. I'm lucky to have him. And you're lucky to be the beneficiary of his wisdom. So without further ado, I take too much of your time and podcast's time and deprive you of the important things that we're going to talk about, and that Len can help you understand, appreciate, and maybe learn about and realize. So without further ado, it's a pleasure to have you join me and my listeners and my cohort and carry on.
Thank you, Morty. Good to be back. It's good returning after a holiday hiatus for the Easter and Passover holidays.
We took last Wednesday off because of that. We gave you a break.
So a lot going on as always. I think what I wanted to focus a little bit on today was some of the ways that President Trump has been making good on his campaign promises. One thing no one, I think, can deny about President Trump is that he does do what he says he's going to do.
Yeah.
And don't be surprised if he does things, because he probably said at some point in the past he's going to do it, and usually lives up to his word, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And one of those things that President Trump promised was to crack down on some of these violent protests that were going on in some of the big universities, which were about a year ago before President Trump was reelected. And he was not happy in what he saw going on and how the universities responded to those protests, how students responded, and how the government responded. So, wanting to make change in that, he is doing what he can. And interesting because, like a lot of things in our capitalist economy, leveraging money is a good way very often to get people or institutions or entities or companies to do what you want them to do and or not want them to do. And although Congress has the theoretical power of the purse, the executive branch, the president, does have the ability to control some of how that money gets spent. So although the executive branch can't appropriate funds, they can modulate and manipulate some of those funds to effectuate the policies that they want. So,
or he can induce Congress to act to support some of his programs.
Yes. So with the support of Congress, he can do even more.
Yeah.
But even without the support of Congress, he can do as much as a lot more than many people thought the executive branch
A lot
could
more
do.
than any president ever did before.
That's what people are. He's pushing the limits of the executive powers, and
he uses his power and his influence to guide behavior.
Yes.
And punishes those
Yes.
that he feels are not behaving in the interest of his country. And that's the way he phrases it. And as maybe at the last election, more than half of the country went along with him. So, for better or worse, if you like what he's doing, it's great in your mind. And if you don't like what he's doing, they're angry at him because to get things done, he seems to violate a lot of basic guidance, laws, rules.
Well, let's put it this way: he breaks norms in the best case and laws in the worst case.
And he violates the Constitution.
Right, laws in the worst case. The best case, it's norms. You don't typically see a president trashing the Fed chairman. You don't typically see a president, with the type of harsh comments that he tends to have on people he doesn't like. That's a norm.
Well, in his view...
But it's not against the law.
No, but in his view, in order to make America great again, to improve our society and the functioning of America, the United States, all his actions are to use his power and his influence to guide behavior that punishes things that he thinks are wrong. I disagree with much of what he does, and I agree with much. For example, he, along with most of the Supreme Court that he appointed, eliminated a woman's right to have to give up her pregnancy, to end her pregnancy. So, he thinks, as many religions believe and religious leaders believe, that that's wrong to deprive that emerging child.
He would say, I didn't eliminate a woman's right to choose. I just eliminated the federal guarantee for her to choose and put it back to the states to make their own rules regarding that. That's what he would say. Because the overturn of Roe v. Wade didn't outlaw abortion. It eliminated the federal guarantee to abortion. So
Yeah, but
that's the nuance that the
but
conservatives put on it.
that have
The de facto
enjoyed-
result is that it's
enjoyed and
restricted.
appreciated
True.
that right feel that they've been deprived of something. They're forced
Correct.
to go through with something that they think is wrong for them, or it would be a burden, or
Correct.
it would be devastating for their lives, whether you agree with them or not. In this country, we like to think if you're not hurting other people, other members of society, other citizens, you should have the right to do whatever you choose, as long as it's
Right. Well, they would say you are.
what?
They would say you are hurting someone, the unborn baby. And just like we have laws against killing fellow people, why shouldn't we have laws against killing unborn children?
Well,
That's the argument.
They're even saying, the women say, I don't want to bring a child that I'm unprepared to bring up. I'm not trained. I don't have the resources.
But that doesn't give you the right to
No, so
just like if you can't afford to raise kids, it doesn't give you the right to kill your kids because you can't afford to raise them.
No, but before they're born, you're not obligated, in their view, to bring them into a terrible world where I feel as a woman that I'm not right for the kid, or even in case of rape or what is it called? Incest.
Mm-hmm.
You're forced to have a baby. That's somebody who's vicious.
Yeah. I'm not defending it. I'm just putting the other side. I mean,
So when you turn it over to the states, there's different motives. There's some laws that we have that should be, within the state, like driving speeds or something to protect the citizenry. But some need to be absolute rules. Like you don't have to turn over to the state major frauds.
Well, I mean, there are certain things that are at the federal level, like free speech. States don't have the individual right to determine whether there's free speech in their state. So,
in economics, they say there's not such a thing as a free lunch. And there's no really free speech, because when you say something that you say is free speech, but it's going to hurt somebody else terribly, with speech you could ruin somebody's life, you could ruin somebody's business.
Well, that's why we have libel laws and slander laws and limitations on free speech.
Judaism, speaking lashon hara, bad about somebody, is tantamount to killing, because you can ruin a person's life by maligning them, by saying false testimony about them. So, some rules have to be by the federal government.
Let's talk about free speech, because that's the central, or one of the central issues on campus, in particular what happened and is happening with Harvard. So let's just set the stage. What happened on April 11th, the Trump administration sends a letter to Harvard saying that we need you to make certain changes in the way that you operate your university. And if you don't, then we are going to take actions like withholding billions of dollars of grants, perhaps rescinding your tax-exempt status, things like that. So what did they want them to do? One, they wanted an audit of campus viewpoints. Harvard was to be required to audit the ideological and political viewpoints of its students, faculty, and staff to ensure, as the letter said, that federal funds are not supporting an environment hostile to intellectual diversity. Then Harvard must reduce the influence of administrators and faculty who, in the administration's view, contribute to institutional bias. Dismantling pro-Palestinian student groups. This was the demand to combat anti-Semitism. The administration in its letter says they have to dismantle or ban specific pro-Palestinian student organizations, including those associated with BDS. They have to disclose, Harvard must provide detailed records of all disciplinary or criminal misconduct by students on foreign visas. And then there was something else where they wanted them to dismantle, eliminate, stop all forms of DEI. So quite a lot of demands for an institution that's used to doing what it wants and priding itself on letting people do and say what they want under the umbrella of free speech.
In most cases, the mass of citizens overwhelmingly is in favor of letting institutions that do good things do whatever they want. But when it could hurt other people, but words can hurt, as we just said, can hurt badly. There are people that are attacked physically and
right.
even inspire attacks against synagogues and
right.
and
I mean,
individuals. And if it happens against African Americans, most people would be supportive of that because we don't want to have a speech that incites. You could give opinions as long as it's within reason. But some of these protests are violent
yep.
and damaging and certainly threatening.
Menacing.
What?
Menacing. I mean, free speech ends where menacing begins, and you're allowed free speech, you're allowed freedom of assembly, you're allowed the right to protest, and should be, even if it's abhorrent. I mean, remember the Nazi march in Skokie, Illinois. As much as I might disagree with what they were espousing, I respect their right to say it. And the Supreme Court has ruled that even hate speech is free speech. But
they even endorsed the freedom of the Ku Klux Klan
right.
to meet and malign.
Right. I mean, provided that it doesn't border on menacing. So you don't.
Yeah, but that's
speech.
That's a tough judgment.
That's the rub, right?
You said I just said it.
What is incite to riot? Right? Is it a passionate speech that gets people to do something, or is it a passionate speech that gets people to riot? What's the difference? That's I think that is the rub. Free speech is clearly not writing something on a wall in spray paint. That's vandalism. So that is clearly.
Some African American this week who was clearly more right wing than many other African Americans was saying it's sad that they have a statue of Floyd who lost his life while being held for a few minutes by a police officer who is now serving like 50 years, and that he should get a statue honoring him when he doesn't have an honorable record or even a record that says he's a decent human being. And even though it says if there's any reasonable doubt, it should be before they put that officer away for 50 years. I think it was some very long sentence because he was instrumental in killing an innocent person is outrageous because it's supposed to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And that police officer and many of the institutions that back him were saying that he may have died from other causes, that he was on drugs, that he had medical issues. So it definitely was not beyond a reasonable doubt.
We don't know that. I mean, we weren't on the jury. That was the jury's decision to make. We can sit here and say it was or wasn't beyond reasonable doubt, but that was the jury.
I heard the testimony
right, so,
of experts,
but that doesn't
who
mean
said that he
but
very
the
well
people on the jury interpreted that
well,
differently. That's what a jury is.
It doesn't mean that the juries are always right.
It doesn't mean they're always wrong either.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did. You're
they're
saying
mostly wrong.
You're saying
no,
that it was outrageous
right.
that they came out with that decision.
They're mostly right, but they can be very wrong.
Maybe they weren't in this case.
Maybe they were, but that's reasonable doubt.
I don't know.
But
but that's
when experts come, recognized experts come and say, yes, we know he died while the guy was holding him down for 10 minutes.
I don't think that's reasonable doubt. I think reasonable doubt is what the jurors determine is reasonable doubt.
Yeah, but they got to go on the facts.
So you're saying the jurors were wrong?
Absolutely.
No, I mean, I don't agree with that. I think the jurors have the right.
They used the wrong, and the judge shouldn't have allowed it.
The judge can't do that. I mean, that's what the purpose of our jury system is that you have a jury who makes decisions. Even if the judge doesn't like what the jury comes out with, you don't say to the jury, I don't like your decision, you're wrong.
The judge could hold against the jury. If he feels that it's contrary to the law that says...
Not when it's up to the jury to make a determination of what is reasonable doubt. Then there's no purpose of a jury trial then.
But if the judge feels strongly
I don't believe
that there was reasonable doubt,
I don't believe so.
I
don't believe so.
You say he can't do it?
That's what the purpose of a jury trial is. The jury is the arbitrator.
Then it goes to another court. It goes to the Court of Appeals.
So. No, an appeal is different. An appeal is when
if I were the judge in that case, I would say, look, I appreciate your service. You have a right to that opinion.
I don't believe that's how our legal system works.
Okay, then it's wrong.
All right, that may be, but I don't believe that's how our legal system works.
I don't remember who said it, but somebody, I think maybe in Germany or something, said the law is a fool.
The law is an ass.
An ass.
Yeah. That very well may be. That very well may be, but that doesn't mean that it isn't the way it is. But
just like the Constitution is far from perfect.
It's 100% far from perfect.
We treat it as if it's a perfect document, and it may very well be, but that doesn't contemplate or include how people will interpret it.
Absolutely.
That's
the flaw in our legal system. I mean, it's the imperfection in our legal system.
It's not only that; it's the imperfection of human beings. We don't get anything absolutely perfect, right?
So here's a question. So I think we both would agree that
sure?
that funds should be withheld from a university who allows violent protests on its campus, who doesn't protect the rights of students on its campus, who students feel unsafe because of the policies of the institution. I think that there's a strong case that federal funding should not go to institutions who do that.
I feel even more strongly in the sense that they're taking money from taxpayers to reward these schools. It's not that they have an entitlement. So when they do something that is questionable, not even surely wrong, but questionable, you could take away the reward and say, well, we're not going to reward that kind of behavior.
So, because I think when you violate students, when you discriminate against students by allowing these sort of protests and harassment and menacing to happen, that is, I think, one of the arguments they make is a violation of Title VI under the Equal Rights Act of 1964. So I think there's a strong case there. But here's the question. One of the things that Trump's saying is, we want you to end DEI. Now, DEI doesn't involve violent protests. It doesn't involve menacing students.
It involves favoritism.
So
bias.
So under that argument, you could say that Title VI is violated because it does discriminate against people based on race, national origin, and therefore it's a violation of Title VI.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an interesting argument. I think one which might prevail, although if it does, that is a huge blow to all kinds of affirmative action programs, because it says, that universities can't have not just affirmative action. The Supreme Court already said that in a decision over a year ago against Harvard, where they lost. But this is even broader.
Harvard lost.
Yeah, this was they lost against an Asian student.
Yeah. How about
group.
Michigan too.
Well, the precedent from that case.
Yeah.
But in this situation, it would affect, say, a university's hiring of staff based on diversity, that they wouldn't be able to do that because it violates Title VI. It discriminates, as you say, again, on race. It just happens to be discriminating against white people instead of any other race, right, as opposed to what has historically been discrimination against black. But I think that's going to be an interesting one. We'll see what Harvard's response is. From a day or two after the letter went, or about a week after the letter from Harvard, President Garber sent out a letter saying, basically, we're not going to be bullied by the Trump administration. We believe in what we do, and we're not making any changes. So now we see how the standoff plays out. Harvard certainly has money, so it's not going to be...
Yeah, Trump would say, or his backers that believe with him would say, why should the taxpayers send you money to support a school that does this kind of behavior when you have your own... Spend your $53 billion, then we'll see you. If you're desperate, we'll maybe reach out to help you, but it's not like you need our money.
Well, it's not a needs basis. It's a violation of rights. The reason we're withholding this money is not because you don't need it
to get the money.
Correct.
From the government.
But
right.
They don't. But Trump is saying the reason we're withholding the money is not because you have plenty of your own.
No,
it's because you're violating these.
But then he could
legal statutes.
He could add. You want to do what you want. You have enough money. You have $53 billion.
Well, you don't even have to do that because that's what's going to happen.
We don't have to take taxpayers that may disagree, or Asians that may. It's unfair. They take students who are much less qualified based on the record, based on exams, based on their grades and put in somebody just to do diversity. That seems eminently unfair.
Now, the interesting thing is because Title VI under the Civil Rights Act was specifically mentions entities that receive federal funds, but there are laws, employment law, that has nothing to do with federal funds that says you can't discriminate against people for race hiring.
Right.
So Harvard and every other company in the country could be in trouble if it's determined that DEI hiring practices, not admissions or anything like that, it's hiring practices that a lot of firms employ, violate employment law based on race. I think we're a ways away from that, but that could happen. I mean, in this conservative Supreme Court, a lot of interesting decisions could be made. Let's talk about another way that the federal government is trying to leverage its policy edicts with the purse strings. And that's right here in New York City. The Department of Transportation has threatened New York City with withholding transportation funds unless it drops congestion pricing. So that deadline to end congestion pricing has arrived and passed at least twice, I think, where Secretary of Transportation Duffy said it has to be ended by this date or else. And then the date came and he extended it a month. That date came, he extended it a month. I think most recently it happened just a few days ago. The deadline came and was extended again. Governor Hochul has put out a video smiling, basically ripping up the letter or showing the letter that said, we're not going to do this. Congestion pricing works, reduces traffic, it raises money for infrastructure, and we're not going to be bullied by the federal government to stop something because they don't like it. So what's your take on that?
That's a case where I believe that's more should be the decision of the local government.
So should the federal government leverage federal funds? We won't give you federal funds to do bridges or road, whatever we're going to withhold money unless you do what we say.
And New York would say, we're not going to pay more taxes, far more taxes than we're supposed to, disproportionately, because we're a more successful state.
Yeah, but the state doesn't pay the tax. The taxpayers
city
do.
Too.
Yeah, but the taxpayers are paying the federal.
But the city pays for many services that the government supports, and they say we won't. It's not. It's just like an international actions of the United States. I believe that it's not our role to interfere with internal happenings of countries. They could be abusive, we can't straighten out the whole world. So for us to get involved in running the operations of a country, to me is wrong, even though it may be hurtful to people within the country.
So it's okay for the federal government to leverage money for hiring practices at universities, but it shouldn't leverage policy desires by withholding money for New York City transportation because it will it keeps congestion pricing.
Because there's a good rational.
I mean, those are different things.
No, there's a good rational argument, and that should be determined by the legislature and within the government of the interested party, the one that's affected. So if it works well, the evidence is it's working well, it's helping, it's dealing with a problem.
Right, but Trump will say this is federal money, and it's
federal money. It's not federal money dealing with the congestion.
No. Well, right. No, but he's saying if you don't get rid of congestion pricing, we're going to withhold money which we were going to give to New York State or New York City to do whatever, bridges, infrastructure. So we are not going to give you that money because we don't like this policy on congestion pricing.
I don't think it's the role of the federal government to intrude. And like I said, and internationally, they're killing each other, people, right? Or we tried with the Arab Spring that time. We're going to change them. We can't, you're not that powerful that you could change human behavior. You could try, but over long term with subtle actions, but not, and it's the people.
I mean, it does seem like
it's a democracy.
It does seem like kind of a out of place. I mean, what does the federal government have to do with congestion pricing?
That's the whole thing about all decisions. They're not all black and white. If it was all black and white, there wouldn't be even where it's black and white, they take issue with facts. True. They can't even agree on facts. So.
It's true. Well, one thing we can agree on is we're out of time.
I don't know that we're out of time.
Yeah.
Lodi, are we out of time? I don't think so. 1 minute?
Over.
Oh. Okay, when you're having a good time, time flies. So thank you for participating. We'd like to hear your feedback on whatever was discussed. And I look forward to being with you again next Wednesday, 6:30, every Wednesday, 6:30. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful every day of your life. Each day should be better than the day before, till you're at least 120. And at that juncture, we could negotiate with God for more. God, I know we did have a sad event this week because the leader of the Christian Catholic Church was lost, and apparently he was a very good, caring father to his flock. So that's part of life. The sadness of life hits us all the time. God bless you all and experience only great, happy events, and most importantly, you make yourself happy. So even unhappy events can be converted. Do that for me, do it for yourself. And if you don't do it for yourself, I promise you I'm coming around to make sure you do. God bless you. Have a wonderful, wonderful every day of your life. You and all your loved ones.
Amen.
Bye.
Amen.